Mr Mayor, you've identified transport and the public realm as a key theme in your draft consolidated budget. And this is something that my group will talk about in the later part of this meeting, as we've got some suggestions. Your Good Growth Fund has funded a scheme to create or refurbish more than 250 toilet units across London. And you told me in an answer to an MQ in October that this work would continue. Now, the Health Committee released an extensive report on the lack of toilets in London and the impact on the people who live, work and visit our city, especially people who may have an urgent need for a loo. What are your plans to keep funding new accessible public toilets, especially as I see the Good Growth's capital spending plan reduces to nothing in 2024-25? Will new toilets be funded by High Streets for All?
Thank you for your question, and also can I commend those that haven't read the report with a snazzy title, the report, which I enjoyed reading. Look, this is an important piece of work you're talking about. Can I again just say how important this issue is to particularly vulnerable Londoners? Many people need access to a loo, otherwise they feel like they're prisoners at home if they don't. So the Good Growth Fund, as you mentioned, is limited in relation to the years it will be available. We're hopeful that there is non-GLA money we can leverage in. You'll be aware one of the things we're seeking to do with the work of the London Recovery Board is not simply rely upon funding from GLA. Third parties have been very helpful coming forward. In relation to the reference to the specific work in relation to High Streets for All, what we're not doing from City Hall is prescribing to high streets and communities and councils how they spend that money. For example, there are some councils and communities that want to use their high streets, the funding, to make sure closed shops are reopened, to make sure we stimulate the high street. Simple things, but really important things like greening the high street can make a difference, as can, as you mentioned, supporting public loos. And so I don't want to prescribe from the centre how councils work up schemes, but they'll have heard your points powerfully made, and I'll make sure that at the London Recovery Board, my team share with officers working on the work of the task force your representations about the importance of seemingly simple things like a loo in opening up our city to people who otherwise feel like they can't go out because of concerns about not having access to a loo.
Thank you. And then just briefly, one of your 9 recovery missions is a new deal for young people. By 2024, all young people in need are entitled to a personal mentor, and all young Londoners have access to good quality local youth activities. I'm just wondering, how are you going to do this without the Young Londoners Fund? The fund is currently due to wind down and release the last of its earmarked reserves. But David Galley has told me in a previous meeting that it was a priority for refunding. So will some of the unallocated 2021-22 business rates income that we now know about and that is temporarily sitting in the business rates reserve, waiting for a purpose, be used for essential services for young Londoners?
So thank you for talking about this really important initiative in relation to the New Deal for young people. And our ambition for every young Londoner to have access to a mentor and good youth facilities near them within walking distance. So you'll be aware that we recently announced some work from the Violence Reduction Unit, supplemented by funding from the GLA, which will be providing mentoring for 100,000 young people over the course of the next year. Now, there are many young Londoners who already have access to a mentor. Often they're being mentored by people, they don't call them a mentor, but they are a mentor. It could be a teacher, a youth worker, it could be a relation or somebody else. We're focusing on those Londoners who haven't got a mentor. So being crude, many middle-class children have access to a mentor. We don't need to help them in relation to the finite resources we have. It's those Londoners who don't. We're confident that with the funding we've already set aside, not just with our partners from adult education to councils to voluntary community sector and others, but also money from the GLA, we can provide the funding in relation to youth work and mentoring. In relation to monies we may have in reserves, I'll be using the next few days and weeks, and when David Galley gives me a report in relation to the return of the billing authorities in February, seeing how much money we can prudently spend next year and going forward, and decide how that money is spent.
Okay,
but I've heard your representations.
Okay, thank you. So I need to stop now, but yeah, you're still making up your mind. Thank you.